Kaoru Hanayama is probably the most beloved character in all of Baki, not counting Yujiro and his entire family tree. Of course. The point is that I was reflecting on this character, wondering why he was so beloved in the fandom when Baki is full of charismatic and epic characters like, for example, Sikorsky joke in 2021. I'm getting worse every time. And yes, I totally include myself in that generalization, since, in fact, Hanayama was my favorite character by far, until, obviously, they introduced us to our beloved autistic Canadian to whom I dedicated. Not only my favorite video by far of all the ones I've made for YouTube, without exception, but it's also the most viewed one I have. Something that truly fills me with pride, and it's something I have to thank this community of punch lovers for. The answer to this question seems to be quite simple. Hanayama has two key factors that make him a character who will definitely be in your top 5 favorite tough guys in all of Baki, which are 1. His true personality, Hanayama, may seem apathetic and ruthless. At first glance, yes, like in those YouTube tutorials on how to be cold and emotionless. That's understandable considering he's the leader of a branch of the Yakuza. Due to his youth, he had to establish his reputation using only his fists, quite literally. But time has shown us that Hanayama is not only kind to his loved ones, like his mother or his foster brother Baki, but also in the Gaiden, which, for those who don't know, are basically the equivalent of spin-offs, like the ones you see in the world of video games. In other words, stories that take place in the same universe as the original manga, but have a different plot. Or they follow the story of a specific character, maybe to give them all the background that the main manga couldn't provide due to time constraints. Maybe it's for the convenience of the author and reader, who knows? You get the point, right? The thing is, even though a lot of people don't know it, Baki has a ton of these Gaiden or spin-offs, whichever you prefer to call them. The ones that matter to us in this case are the 2 manga that are entirely dedicated to Hanayama, and I highly recommend them to you. One of them, Scarface, tells us a bit about Hanayama's life as the head of his organization, the Yakuza, and how he has to deal with different criminals who want to get rid of him. While the other Gaiden, let's say, is more focused on humor, since it tells us about Hanayama's school life. And I can assure you that it's a complete show. I'll just say that Hanayama ends up being the crush of a girl from his school who confesses to him in the middle of the street, to which Hanayama literally pulls down his pants and, with his balls out in the open, tells her, "Do you think you could handle all of this?" To which the girl runs away in a panic. What the hell are you doing that you still haven't started reading this manga? Well, as I was saying, in these stories you really get to see Kaoru's true colors. Even though he's an introvert, he won't hesitate to help someone who has earned his respect, or someone who can't defend themselves, or simply anyone who, in his opinion, deserves it. And I think the second point is completely obvious. Hanayama throws more punches than Amazon's overworked employees deliver packages. So if we mix in a bowl a charismatic character, extremely badass, and with a good heart, we get Hanayama. If we look back at the character, we'll remember that he was introduced to us as a ruthless mobster. He was considered the strongest man in Japan. The strongest one, right, Yujiro? What also surprises the viewer, and which personally left me with a permanent expression of... It was when they say that giant Yakuza, weighing 160 kilos, flipped over a 1,500-kilo car. As if he were SpongeBob flipping a Krabby Patty. He's 15 damn years old. Yeah, very believable. Nah, actually it's partially justified, since it makes it very clear to us that Kaoru is a force of nature and definitely not a normal person. Because even from her earliest childhood, she was already blowing people's arms off, like her father, for example. Not only the Hama clan was going to be naturally powerful beings, right? Hanayama even had a brief arc where he was an antagonist during his fight against Baki. We're told about the meaning of the tattoo he has on his back. The story of that man who protected Hanayama's lineage many years ago at the cost of giving his life. Here we had the first sign that Hanayama feels extreme respect towards those he considers worthy. When he got the tattoo, he told the tattoo artist himself that the work was incomplete, to which the artist, who apparently was the best in all of Japan, felt his pride wounded. and he accused Hanayama of being a brat who didn't understand the symbolism and meaning of that tattoo. So Hanayama proceeds to enter a rival mafia base with his bare fists. Despite his victory, he suffered numerous cuts on his back. That was what Hanayama was really looking for, since the man who protected his lineage died from the cuts given to him by some bandits. After this madness, Hanayama returns to the tattoo artist's house to show the completed work, and the tattoo artist himself apologizes to Hanayama on his knees for having underestimated him. Then comes the first moment when the fandom really started to become attached to this character. After Baki's abusive and disgusting mother hurt him badly in public and destroyed him emotionally, some thugs try to abuse Baki, and he lets himself get beaten up because he doesn't have the will to defend himself, after what his mother said and did to him. But Hanayama God appears to save the day. He easily gets rid of the Pocahontas thugs and crouches down to be at Baki's level. Baki radically changes his mood because the only thing Baki needed at that moment was someone to talk to. Someone to give him advice. A person who knew what they were talking about and inspired confidence in him. An older brother, Hanayama. They have a conversation about their mothers, where Hanayama tells him, among other things, that he no longer has his mother with him. After this conversation, the two of them would go on to have a relationship that was practically like brothers. From here, Hanayama became my favorite character. Was the Underground Arena Tournament arc next? In this arc, Hanayama had two incredible moments. The first was when he supported that mafia apprentice who was trying to earn Hanayama's approval. Thanks to this guy's determination, he earned Hanayama's appreciation. And we all know that earning this man's appreciation means you're going to have your back very well covered. Because this gangster attacks Andrianov Zargon, who was that giant Russian who fought against Jack in the quarterfinals. The guy doesn't stand a chance against Andrianov, who was abusing his power. So Hanayama instantly appears defiantly behind the Russian, saying, "Now you have my attention?" It's true that Andrianov helps him, but that's typical for the Baki manga. When a new character is introduced, they tend to give them a lot of hype at the beginning. And the second moment, obviously, is Katsumi versus Hanayama. We all pretty much agree that Hanayama should have won that fight since he was clearly superior to Katsumi. Even though he surpassed him in technique, he couldn't stop Hanayama's overwhelming strength. I believe that Katsumi shouldn't have been able to recover after taking multiple hits from Hanayama. But that's just my opinion. Then, in the Convict Saga, Hanayama faced Spec, giving us what I think is the best fight of the whole saga, with all due respect to Dorian. But it's not just the fight itself, but also the context. Spec is a character that's just cool, that's the way it is. He's a big guy, pretty intimidating and charismatic, but you can't deny he urgently needed someone to beat him up. Because, damn it, what a cheater this guy is. Yeah, I know it was a street fight and anything goes, but trying to hit Baki while he's kissing his girlfriend. I see that from someone who doesn't even have the slightest bit of honor or code. Luckily, Hanayama Aniki was there, and surprisingly, he managed to take Spec out of the scene in a way that was both stealthy and violent. Anyway, Hanayama, you all know what happened after that. They had that fight that catapulted Hanayama to the top as one of the most badass and resilient characters in all of Baki. Rarely has anyone been seen endure as much punishment as Hanayama did during this fight. Literally. Spec made him chew dynamite and shot him about 10 times in the mouth. Not to mention he drilled into his brain by sticking his finger in his ear. A technique that would be fatal for any human being. If it weren't Hanayama we're talking about. From this point on, Hanayama had done all the work. Nothing else was needed for him to be an amazing character. He could have stayed in his private bar drinking whiskey for the rest of the series and no one would have minded. Well, maybe I would have been upset with him for not inviting me for a shot of whiskey. Or 2, or 3, or 4. But Hanayama Pito de Toro wasn't satisfied, so he plays fights with a primitive man who used to kill dinosaurs. Pickle himself admits that Hanayama has the power of a charging rhinoceros, making it clear that our beloved Yakuza is no joke. He also has a bloody fight against the legendary Samurai Musashi Miyamoto. And recently in the manga, he crushed one of the sumo wrestlers with terrifying ease. I have to admit I would have liked it if the sumo wrestler had made it a bit harder for him. But anyway, nobody really cares about these sumo wrestlers. All these elements, along with others I haven't mentioned, like the constant concern he had for Baki, more than justifies the love people have for Hanayama in the Baki fandom. So personally, I don't consider him an overrated character at all, not even close. He's one of the characters who has had the most involvement, and since he's a man of few words, every time he has to do or say something, it's a complete spectacle. Finally, I remind you that I'll soon start rereading Son of Ogre and Baki Do on stream. So I'll leave you the link to the purple YouTube, as always, where we'll all read together and remember all the epic battles that happened during these mangas. I'll be waiting for all of you there. Stonker moment. As always,